Well, today you get to listen to one of the most fun things for me to talk on, which is hitting. I love to discuss the physical side, the mental side, the whole offensive game of athletes. And today I got to dive in with Coach Kyle Welch from our Springfield region, and just a true leader of the developing complete hitters. Kyle shared on not only the movements that he helps athletes with, but also the mindset and the approach and just the different things that it takes for athletes to truly be successful as a high level hitter. And I think Kyle's got just an amazing perspective of the whole gamut, being able to develop the movements, but also being able to develop, the approach. And I know you're going to enjoy this discussion today. Welcome, everybody, to a new edition of Hardball Talks. And I am Brett Swip, your host. And today I am joined by Kyle Welch, who is the director of Extreme Elite in Springfield and the 17U national coach for the Extreme Elite program, and also one of the more established and sought out instructors around hitting in Central Illinois. So, Kyle, thanks so much for joining us.
Appreciate it, man. Good seeing you.
Yeah, you too. I'm just going to kick us off here and kind of do like a little bit of, kicking off this offensive discussion. And we're going to talk hitting. I am planning to bring on some, offensive perspectives and hitting coaches, and just I think our game of baseball and softball is, has a lot of interesting topics and discussions around offense right now. And so I'm excited to kind of just learn about, things that you're seeing in the game, things that, you're bringing into your training. The Extreme, we've been around for 25 years. So we've seen a lot of what I would call sort of styles and, things that people have tried to bring into the game of hitting at various times over that 25 years. And it just always kind of comes to the foundational work of, instructors like yourself and kids that are, learning, doing the fundamentals well. And that's what is probably really important to the offensive side. So my hope over this kind of next few weeks is to lean into knowledgeable people like yourself that also bring a perspective of being a coach. You're a trainer in the cage, you're a trainer during the off season, but then, you're coaching athletes at the highest level, preparing to be college athletes. So you get to see the translation between the cage and the game. So with that being said, I just want to lay a little bit of background of kind of why we want to maybe talk about hitting on Hardball Talks and have these discussions, and appreciate, again, you joining us. So Kyle, maybe just start off with a little bit of background of how did you fall in love with teaching hitting, or how did you come about being a hitting instructor?
Obviously, playing the game growing up, I was a pitcher. I pitched a little bit in college too, but hitting was always my favorite. There's nothing better than, home run or anything like that. And as I got back into coaching and getting into everything else, hitting's always been my number one. It's always been what I've loved to do. As we've gotten older and as the game's kind of changed, there's tons of different philosophies out there, and everyone's always talking about how the game changes, but you can always go back to the old school effects as well. So I kind of pride myself on being in that middle ground. So I've always loved it at hitting, and there's, as you know, as a coach, there's literally nothing better than watching a kid just that light bulb go off and then watch him develop and turn into a dude or a player. I'm sorry, both ways. We were softball and baseball here. But that's why, hitting's just the best.
Yeah, that's awesome. So let's say that the new student or a new athlete walks into your cage. Let's say they're at the age of 14 or 15, right at that kind of, pivotal time in their career. Where are you starting with them? What are you asking them? What are you having them do? Where are you starting?
It's a great question. So, we talk about whether you're 10, 14, 21, 25, no matter what, I like to start the same thing. The thing about baseball is, the way I look at it is every other sport, we do a lot of multi-sport athletes, right? Every other sport comes down to being athletic and being balanced. Football, how you properly hit a guy, balance in basketball, soccer, anything like that. Baseball is by far the hardest sport. You can't put another athlete into baseball and he can't just go hit a baseball. But a lot of times we don't think about being balanced. We don't think about anything but the outcome. Baseball is very outcome driven, the contact at the end. So what I look for when we start working together is, are they balanced? Are they in a good position to hit the baseball? Because everything, like I said, is very outcome driven and everyone's always wanting to focus on the end of the swing, you're dipping, things like that. I want to see, are you in a good position to hit the ball? How's your body move? And each hitter's different. Like we make the comment that we don't teach the same swing, but we teach the same swing. So if you come into the facility at turn 2 and you got, my guys that are playing Division 1 or guys that are, 15 years old or 12 years old, they don't look the same. But when we get them into a position, what we call our launch position, they all should be in the same position to hit because they're in a good balanced position.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So what does balance look like in the game? So if you're coaching down in the third base box and you're seeing one of your guys and you're seeing that they look really balanced, they look really under control, what does that look like to you?
Yeah, I mean, it's simple, and I'm sure you've been to a couple of our games. I don't say much from the box. I in a game, you're locked in. You shouldn't hear me. You're in the box. You're ready to go. The number one thing I say, and I'm sure my players hear it when they go to sleep at night, is learn from your take. Learn from your take. How you're taking a pitch, that says a lot. And it also says a lot to the catcher. It says a lot to the pitcher. It says a lot to that other guy in the dugout. That's giving cues away. So if you're able to take a ball efficiently and not falling over, a lot of times we see hitters, they're trying to go get the pitch. We teach our guys, and I'm sure you hear it all the time, work behind, work behind, work behind. So making sure that, when we get into that launch position, that we're good with 50-50 and we're not falling towards the pitcher.
Mm-hmm. So kind of going on from balance, so you're stepping the cage, you're getting them to, understand the importance of that balance. When it's time to get, into the baseball or get behind the baseball, what are you cueing them on, or what are some, constraints that you're having them work through? Where do we go next?
Man, we could really go down a rabbit hole. So there's a couple of them, hips versus hands. We always break it down. My philosophy on hitting is kind of like putting Legos together. A lot of us, when we put Legos together, we don't go by the steps. You skip 1, 2, 3, all of a sudden you're lost. Mm-hmm. That's the swing to me. 1, getting into your legs. 2, bringing the hips. 3, arms going. If you look at most hitters, they're very 3 heavy. The arms are doing a lot of the work. So when we get into a position to hit, if they're not in a good position for their hands to work behind their hips, then all of a sudden they're on stage 5 of those Legos. They don't have a base, and they're like, where am I at? That's the base of the swing. So the theory and I guess the motto that we use a lot is simple is better. So I'll ask every hitter, like, what does that mean to you? Because there's a lot of different definitions and variances when it comes off of that. So simple is better means the less that you do, the less that can go wrong. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of the way I look at hitting. You see, and I don't think we see enough of this, Brett. I don't know about you, but like when I was growing up, I was in the backyard trying to be Sammy Sosa, Ken Griffey Jr., Gary Sheffield, Mark McGwire. I was doing all the different batting stances when I was younger. Right. I don't think we see enough of that nowadays. At the same time, guys will get in there, big leg kick and everything, try to explaining that. So a couple of the cues that we work off of that is like, getting your leg up in the air, that looks cool. Girls like it, all that type of stuff, right? But it's all about timing. The timing is the key. So simple is better means, the biggest cues that I'll kind of go off of is your hands staying behind your hip as you work through, as you get through, the hand staying behind as that back hip works to the corner of the plate. And the other cue is the barrel of the bat wants to stay connected to your back shoulder. So we can get into that later when we talk about posture and tilt, which is really key in staying connected. Nolan Arenado is probably the number one example of that. I hate to say it as a Cubs fan, but he's one of my favorite hitters for that reason. He really stays connected. But simple is better.
Maybe he'll be a Cub.
Yeah, well, that means I got to spend money, and they don't like doing that anymore. But yeah, I mean, I think if you came into the facility and you're listening to me talk to either our 10U guys or my 17U national guys, those are the things you're going to hear a lot. Learn from your take. Simple is better, and being balanced and just really working the hands. It's another way to behind the hips. I guess one way we talk about is how a train operates. We kind of talk about that. The engine's in the front, everything comes from behind. Your core and your hips, that's the engine. Your arms and the barrel, that's just following for the ride.
So, all right. So we're moving. We're getting balanced. We're getting behind the hips. We're letting the hands, kind of move behind them. Now we're getting closer to the baseball, right? We're getting closer to the baseball, and now you started to go down that route, which is where you're cueing posture, you're cueing tilt. Walk us through or making contact with the baseball.
Yeah, and I guess we didn't even get into the simple fact of getting loaded first, and that's perfectly fine. That's my fault. But is when getting to the baseball, we really want to talk about working behind the baseball, not trying to jump at it. So we do a lot of drills with med balls, just kind of getting our barrel into the zone efficiently. So we do a lot of palm up, palm down. Mm-hmm. And when we get palm up, palm down, we're able to get behind the baseball more. So like a cue that I like to use is you want to take the barrel of your bat to the opposite gap. One of the best hitters of all time, again, it's weird saying as a Cubs fan, Albert Pujols. And I think one of my favorite videos on Albert Pujols, he talked about, I think it was with Harold Reynolds, and we'll show it to our guys. He said he gets in the box and he looks at center field and he looks for that gap. You get out there, you got 385 or 365 in each gap. The numbers on the field's there. And that's where he wants to take his barrel. So getting to a good extension, you have to get the barrel in the zone quicker. I think the biggest deficiency we see with hitters is that their hands cast early and the barrel gets in late. And then all of a sudden their upper body has to do all the work. And when the upper barrel has to do all the work, that's when we turn off, we do everything else. So the med ball turns, just kind of getting guys to understand to get that palm up, palm down. We're not trying to get back here. I'm not going to call anybody out on that, but we're not trying to do any of that stuff. We're trying to get palm up, palm down, and taking our barrel to the gap. The way we show that, Brett, is that they can hit every pitch with the same swing. You can hit the outside pitch. You can hit the middle pitch, middle in, and in. So our cue to be able to pull a baseball is to keep turning. If your hips are working first, your barrel gets in the zone and you're able to stay efficiently, you're able to keep turning, and that barrel is going to keep going. And I think the best example of that is Freddie Freeman, which I love that went viral. Did you see the story with him and his dad hitting BP?
Yeah.
So that's like one of my favorite videos we show our guys. He never pulled a baseball. He just always worked the opposite gap. But I tell our guys when we show them that video, how many times do you see Freddie Freeman pull a baseball for a home run?
Right.
All the time.
Right.
That's because he just keeps turning. Yeah, it's not how he trains. Exactly. It's not how he trains it. He just keeps turning.
Yeah. Well, let's keep going because we're gonna dive in, and I love the energy that you put off when you talk hitting, because I can just see, you're up in your chair, you're excited, like that's a true sign of somebody that's got passion and something they do. So I love you for that. I love that how you talk about it. Let's finish. I know there's lots more parts to the swing, and I'm not I don't want to skip parts, but at the same time, I also think that we have a discussion coming up here around approach and mindset, and I think that there's some true nuggets that you're going to provide there. So let's finish the swing. So you talked about extension, you talked about staying in the zone long, you talked about completing that turn. How do you help athletes understand what they should look like when their swing is finished?
Yeah, it's real simple. If you're falling off, so if you're a right-handed hitter and you're falling off to third base, it's probably the worst thing you can do. You want to fall to first base. And a lot of that is just understanding your front side control. Front side control, and then as you finish your swing, you can do all the cues, keeping your hands above the baseball, all that fun stuff. But we talk about whipping a towel. If you whip a towel at somebody, like we'll always ask you hit your little brother, your little sister, whatever, everyone always raises their, yeah. So if you whip a towel, I always ask them, okay, so when I take that same towel and I just don't stop, what's going to happen to that towel? And it's just going to keep floating. That is probably the biggest deficiency we see with hitters, is because they can't decel. Everything's acceleration and going towards the baseball at all times. But if you're not stopping and creating that whip, that's what allows us to finish our swing. Yeah. So that's getting that into hitters' heads, using a terminology like that, or kind of giving them an example of how we whip that towel. If you're not able to hit the brakes, then you're not going to be able to finish your swing. And that's when you see guys kind of fall forward. Nowadays, you see a lot of the scissor kick type stuff, which when I first saw it, I was like, what are we doing? I don't even know what that is. And the best example I saw was someone says, okay, if you swing an axe, what's your backside going to do? And you're going to kick back. And that's when I was like, oh, well, that makes complete sense. That's a natural thing for most hitters. It's hard to, teach guys how to move that way. That gets a little bit deeper in the woods. But finishing the swing too, I think we'd be dumb if we didn't talk about launch angle. And I make it very clear, launch angle is a metric. It's the angle to which the ball comes off your barrel. It's not a swing. I think that's the biggest misconception, is that people think it's a swing. So we want to get to a position to where we're at extension, we're able to finish, because we're always trying to hit high line drives. That's the goal every time. Hit high line drives. If you're in a cage, line drives, those are home runs in a game. So if we can stay consistent in the cage, live in the gaps, and get to that extension and finish through and control our front side, then we're going to be in a good position in a game.
Mm-hmm. So let's go back now, because I do want to give you just kind of a minute to kind of enlighten us or give us your thoughts on kind of how to get loaded and how that assists timing. So we're working backwards now. We're going to the beginning of the swing.
Gotcha.
What cue are you giving guys when you're trying to, one, maybe tell them why it's important to load, or two, how they should load? What are some teaching points that you're using?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's important to know what load means. So we go through that a lot, and I always tell my players, how would you teach it to an 8-year-old? So, we have our buddy programs where we have our guys teaching little guys. And it's important for these players to be able to explain to me their swing and their load, so I know that they understand it themselves. So a lot is like, oh, I'm just going to get my weight back. You get your weight back where? So one of the biggest things we talk about is getting in a proper loaded position into our back hip. We don't want to be too far on our knee backside. We don't want to be, 70-30. We want to be sitting in our back knee. We want to be in a good position in our backside, loaded into our hip. That way we can fire off of it. We see a lot of guys spin off on the back foot. So when you talk about being in a good position, being in a good load, the cue is, we're always sitting on a fastball. We sit on a fastball. You can't play this game. If you can't hit a fastball, you're not going to play this game. So we're always sitting on a fastball. We want to be in a position to react to every other pitch. Are there going to be times we're sitting breaking ball? Absolutely. But from a balance standpoint, I want to be able to hit the fastball. And if I am wrong, then I'm still in a good position to fight that pitch off or go the other way or just get my barrel to it or whatever I can. So one thing that we do is, you can use bands. You can literally wrap a band around and kind of get them to understand the feel of when you're in a good load and drop into that one into your launch. Flamingo drill where you got your leg up. I think one of my favorite drills we do is we'll put a heavy ball on their front foot, and we'll have them just kind of slide off that ball. And as soon as they land, they have to be in a good 50-50 position, because you'll see guys a lot of times fall forward. That way they can understand, okay, I need to be properly sitting back. Um, having the gyms in our facilities, I think is huge. So, I'll immediately just say, okay, give me a good squat position. If you're working with Jared, what are you going to be in your knees? You're going to be in your hip. Can you twerk? A lot of guys, oh no. So we dance in the cage a lot. I'm like, listen, if you want to be a good athlete, you got to be able to move. So, understanding, the twerk, you have to have your chest over and your back's going to work out. So just little things like that way they can feel what proper balance is in getting into a load, getting into your coil, and just having that green light mentality, be ready to go.
So let's go back to something you said at the beginning, which is right now in the world of, social media, in the world of metrics, in the world of technology, there's a lot of different ways that hitting is being taught. There's a lot of different, drills. There's a lot of different, wars going on between, trainers, coaches, instructors. How do you navigate that? How do you navigate that as a learner, but also as a coach who, has a lot of experience and tried and true ways? How do you navigate all the new?
There's a few ways around it. First off, just knowing that your players trust you and that you have the best interest in them. Don't have an ego. I think that's the biggest thing. There's way too many egos in this game. Everyone's trying to reinvent the wheel. There's no one way to teach hitting. And I mean, if you're not, what's the word I'm looking for? If you're not, changing your ways on some things, or just, I'm always trying to learn like that. That's how I am. Yeah. I'm trying to grow. Sorry. That's what I was looking for. Just trying to grow at all times. I have, probably 4 or 5 hitting guys that I follow extensively and have good conversations with, or have had conversations with on Instagram. Most of these guys are really approachable and stuff. I send those out to my hitters. And the biggest compliment I can get is, hey, I was watching this clip the other day, and that's a conversation me and you had in the cage, and I'm like, okay, so that, and a lot of us kind of teach the same thing. Sometimes it's same message, different voice. You see that with a lot of players when they, go work, or they go to a college and go to a camp, and, hey, this guy said this, and yeah, that's what we're working on. That's what this means, stuff like that. So, not having an ego and knowing that you didn't invent anything, I just try to communicate it as well as I can with all my hitters. Now, there's also a lot of bad advice out there, because some guys just are stuck in their ways, or they just think that's the way to do it. And I'm not saying that's, that there's a wrong way to doing it. But if I have a kid who, it happened last year, I had a kid whose coach, probably had his best interests, hopefully, in this kid. But what he was teaching was really messing his swing up. It really was. He was, reach a knob to the ball, get your hands out, hit your hands out. And him and his dad are like, but, we talk about staying behind and letting the hand go. We talk about knob direction. That's different than throwing your knob at the ball. It's, and then you just got to explain, like, okay, well, maybe he means this because this is what I mean. So let's try to find where we're at. And, just having those open communications. And I personally, I tell all my guys, if I ever say something that may confuse you with your coach, I will have that conversation with the coach and just make sure that I'm not, we're not stepping on any toes or anything. But that all comes back to, there's so many different voices out there, especially social media. You see a lot of guys, it's all about likes and everything else like that. There's also some really good coaches out there that really know what they're doing. Out front hitting, Casey is amazing. He's one of my favorite follows. Trey Hannum, who's, played at UIS here, and he's just blown up, works with the top players. But if you listen to what he says, he makes it as simple as possible. Yeah. So it's good that if I got guys, I can say, okay, well, then watch these clips. They're not competition to me. You know what I mean? Like, they're great hitting instructors. There's really, I always say that if you're in it for the right reasons, there's no competition. Mm-hmm.
Talk a little bit about maybe. Well, let me start it this way. We did a little survey at the end of the season. Hunter Hiskey, one of our player development guys, he put a survey out to the coaches that said, what parts of the game did you feel like your guys were really developed in? What parts of the game did you feel like you guys were behind? And in hitting, there were some things. I think We felt our guys were moving well. We felt our guys were, strong and athletic. There was quite a bit of, some low scores around approach, some low scores around adjustability, being able to handle in-game situations. Like, what as a coach, so I love trainers that get to see it in the cage and get to see it on a field at the highest level. What do you see? Where do things fall apart? Where do things work? What do you try to think about? Just kind of dive into a little bit of the field.
Yeah, I mean, first off, it's easy to be a cage warrior. I mean, kudos to those guys that are grinding the cage, right? But the way I say is, I'm old. I'm not that old, but these weren't like this. I say if you're up to bat, you want all these out on you. Be ready to put on a show. So you have to want all the pressure, and that starts with practice. If you're not swinging at 100%, obviously there's drills where you're not. But if you're not getting after and every pitch has a purpose, that's going to translate to the game. So that's one thing we really talk about our guys. What's the point of a game? Show off. It's literally just to go show off and have fun. Your hard work and your training, that's done in the cage in the off season. So you got to have a creative mindset, whether you're hitting off a tee, what is success? I think that's huge. When we were at ABCA, I think it was the Mississippi State hitting coach, talked about what is success. If you're hitting off a tee, it better be 10 line drives at the back of the cage. If you're hitting front toss, 7 balls off the back of the cage. That translates to 4, 5 being to the back of the cage off the machine. So getting our kids to understand what is success. So when you get in there to get loose, you're not getting loose to play, or you're not playing to get loose. You're getting loose to go play. So having a routine. That's why we do our warm-ups, our dynamic warm-ups and all that stuff. So I think it starts with that. Having an intent with every swing, and then we call it a green light mentality. So we talk about learning from your take. If you see a lot of guys where we talk about green light is yes, out of the hand, yes, 3/4 of the way there, yes, halfway there, yes, when it's to you, and then if it's yes, you go. But if it's no, it's an aggressive take. Look no further than Juan Soto, Bryce Harper. If you see a lot of guys that if it's yes, maybe yes, and all of a sudden they fall back on a pitch. So that approach is very important. So we really got to get the green light approach down. Yeah. And that's off the machine, that's off the tee, that's off everything. That's got to translate to the game.
Yeah. I'm going to kind of interject here. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, you're good.
I think that, we've been talking a lot this fall about that, the success from hitters, the success from pitchers. Like there's something out there that separates those athletes. Yeah. And to me, when I hear you talking about the things that you bring into training, I would call it like the complementary stuff, like the stuff that brings approach, that brings a focus, that brings competitiveness, that brings intent. To me, those are the separators. And I think that we as coaches have to listen to these things you're talking about, because I think we so much focus on the swing, or we focus on the move, or we focus so much on the drill. But the reality is that the separators are, what do you do when the lights are on? What do you do? What happens when you're in competition mode? What do you can you adjust? I really hear you, Kyle, and I of course you and I've had relationship and had these conversations before, but I think one place that you're different is that you bring that into your training. For sure. Am I right on that? Am I wrong on that? Kind of shit.
100%. I mean, especially the guys that we coach, the age we're at, 17U, like last year 16U, they show up to a game. There's 25, 30 college coaches watching you. Pride myself looking at my guys and they're ready for it. And I think that's because we have that conversation almost every practice. I'm sure they get annoyed with me. I don't care. How you warm up is how you play. How you practice is how you play too. So we want them to be locked in every practice, because at the end of the day, no one's going to remember what your record was when you were 6 and you played in Extreme Elite National. but you're going to remember those memories. You're going to remember all that stuff, and you're going to be able to be locked in and remember how that goes. So we want them ready every time. So we do a lot of scenarios. So when we're working off a machine, we always finish with scenarios, runner at second base, no outs. Can you get the guy in, or you have to go hit a pop fly. It's, this guy's slider dominant. It's a runner at third base. There's one out. What's your job? Get it to the outfield. Can you control your barrel enough? And then we'll put that pressure on them. But I think that's kind of the biggest problem that we see is kids don't understand what it means to get in the cage and work. Dry swings. Everyone always asks, like, what can I do? What can I do? What drill can I do? There's no magic drill. There really isn't. We can set you up with a number of drills that you can work on for your plane deficiency or if all that fun stuff. But if you don't know your swing, that doesn't matter. Every kid I get in the cage with, no matter how old they are, the first thing I tell them, what's my number one job as a hitting coach? So I'll ask you, like, Brett, what's your number one job as a hitting coach?
To make people confident, to make people be able to make adjustments, to figure out what their swing is, to be their own hitting coach, basically to be their own hitting coach in the moment.
So I tell them, my number one job is make you your best coach. If you don't know your swing, nothing else matters. I can't be there every game. You can send me all the video you want, but you got to be your best hitting coach. That means you have to understand your movement. So, I'm sure you get tons of video. Being a high school season, my swing sucks. I don't know where I'm at. And I tell them every time, I just watch the video and I hit pause. I hit pause when their foot gets down. Are you in a good position at launch? Are you in a good balance? Because from there, if they're out on the front foot, everything's going to just fall back. So just got to take them back to the basics. Mm-hmm. Another thing that's important when it comes to that and, being the guy in the moment is your mindset. You have to have a positive mindset. I just remind these guys, this game is really, really, really hard. And it is 90% mental, and it's as simple as if you're on the mound and you tell yourself, don't throw a ball. What are you going to do? Mm-hmm. You don't throw a ball. Mm-hmm. So when you get in the cage, and I tell my guys, if you're in the cage with me, you should never, ever, ever focus or worry about making contact. Mm-hmm. Who cares? You can make contact. How hard am I going to hit the baseball? It's got to be your goal. So, instead of thinking, if you're a guy that's flying open, instead of thinking, don't fly open, think positive. Okay. Yeah. Stay closed. Stay closed.
Do you feel in this world of offense, in this world of hitting coaches, in this world of metrics, have we stopped training the separators? Have we stopped focusing on those things?
I think so. I think it's become so swing derivative.
Yeah.
Everyone trying to put their their spin, them trying to find that one thing, okay, you got to do this. Well, that move may not work for him. Yeah. So it just, if this isn't on, it's not going to be on during the game. So getting them in the right position to know that they're the ones got to make those adjustments. If you're not failing in the cage, you're not working right. You better fail a lot in the cage.
There feels like there's a disconnect. I was recently at a college prospect camp and had an opportunity to hear a college coach kind of talk a little bit about some of the hitters and some of the players that I know you've coached. And the words that they used really don't match the words that are on social media. The words that are on social media are, again, they're metric based, they're outcome based, they're they're in a controlled environment, on a machine or whatever. But the words that I heard the college coaches saying were, that hitter, he's got controlled violence. They were talking about one of the hitters and saying, he's somebody that I feel can hit at the college level because he's adjustable. He's got the pop and he's going to get more pop as he continues to get stronger, but he's got the ability to adjust, based on what the pitcher's giving him. I also heard a college coach talk about a way that one of your players took BP, and he talked about that there was a certain maturity there. Right now, as a high school coach, one of the biggest dilemmas that I think that we have is the way that we take BP. It's not cool to take BP like Freeman does. It's not cool to put backside ground balls on the ground. And so I because that's not what's on Instagram. That's not what's on social media. So. Here I am being the crudgety old grandpa here, but I just feel like what I hear the college coaches say is not what I'm seeing, us market or seeing us coaches focus on. I don't know. What do you feel?
I mean, boring doesn't always win, right? But you said a
Man.
few cues in here that I absolutely love. Controlled violence. That's use that all the time in the cage for my guys. On the mound too. It's quiet, but it's loud. Looking quiet in your load, but when you're ready to go, it's loud. It's controlled violence. There's no bigger compliment you can give me as a coach is when you compliment me on how my guys warm up. And that happened all the time last year, getting around some college coaches. Love the way you guys play catch. Love the way you went through everything. And as well as I do, these guys get recruited off how they warm up. I'm fortunate enough to work with a kid that's, a Division I guy, and I wasn't his hitting coach per se, just a good friend that hit with me. Right. He went to a Big 12 school and they recruited him by watching him play 3 innings, but they watched him warm up probably 20 times. So when you talked about our guys, getting loose their first round, I love to hear that because it's not, I'll tell you what's not cool, Brett, is hitting 12 balls pull side into the net. And then you're like, hey, I'm ready to go. Then you get in a game, you pull it over to the shortstop and you get in the dugout and you throw your helmet. And, what's going on? How'd you warm up?
Yeah.
If you're not able to understand what the purpose of hitting in a cage is, and guess what? Us coaches get guilty too. We rush.
Yeah.
Especially in travel baseball. Thank God there's, more cages available at some places, but you got to rush through. So just, okay, we're going to take 2 rounds. Your first round, everything is at the second baseman's face. Lefties, everything's at a shortstop's face. Just feel yourself. You can get warm up without even hitting a baseball. We call them Legion days, right? Like I think Joe Madden coined that for the major league guys did with the Cubs. They'd have Legion days where they just showed up and played. Yeah. And our guys, I know, couldn't even imagine that. We don't get our, we didn't get to do that. We just had to get out there and get loose. It's a mindset thing. So, no, you're 100% right. And just because it's boring doesn't mean it's not right. And just because you're not saying everything that's cool doesn't mean it's not right. But at the end of the day, those are the things that, like you said, you got some big coaches that are telling you the same things.
Yeah. So if we see those scores from our coaches where they say approach isn't where it needs to be, adjustability isn't where it needs to be, what do we need to do as trainers? What needs to be our focus? We're headed into our off season right now. Like, how do we change that trend?
Adjustability, I'd say, look at your bounce. It's really that simple. I think you and I had that conversation as we got into our big national tournament, and I had some guys I hadn't coached yet, seen them around, everything else like that. And we had that conversation in the dugout a lot, like, hey guys, you're not allowed, you only get to swing from your launch. You're only going to swing from your launch because you're jumping forward. This is what we're going to focus on. So when I look at adjustability, that's what I look like. Like, why are you not able to adjust to that pitch? Is it because you're approaching the head? Is it also you're not in a good position to hit? Yeah. So that's one thing. I think a big focus for us is, being in a good balanced position when you get your foot down and ready to pull that trigger, that you're able to stay behind and hit any pitch you can, or at least fight it off. And then mindset, I think we're just doing a really good job of having those conversations in the cages. Yeah, getting those guys locked in. It's up to the players. Now, what I love, I just sit back and listen to conversations in the cage. I'm big on that. We're fortunate enough to have a lot of college players that come home on break and hit in our cages, whether they play for Extreme down there or, they train with your guys down there up here. Got a lot of guys I used to work with. They're friends where we got major league guys. We got, that's just great because I just sit there and I just listen to them talk to our guys. I tell my guys, hey, I'm going to be in the cage with these guys on Thursday night at 8. You ain't got to come hit. Come here and listen. And I've had guys that have done that for 4 or 5 years now that they come back and do that, which is awesome.
Those are great things. Yeah.
Those are absolute great things.
We need to focus more on that. I really think, I think it's easy to kind of like listen to something like this and that's not like the glitzy drill, right? Or that's not like the glamorous thing, but man, we have just undervalued IQ, in-game IQ. We've undervalued mindset. We've undervalued. One of the athletes that I coached in college, I used to say this all the time. They were so successful because they would literally, like, in the middle of the day, come to my office and just sit on the couch and we would talk hitting.
Yeah.
And it was like in between classes and wasting time or whatever. And we would just talk hitting. And it's like, we have such a controlled training environment right now. As coaches, we have such a, so many drills and so many technology. It's always like the latest thing, get the latest thing. But it feels like we're forgetting to develop that ability to just talk it. And then when you can talk it, then you can live it out more.
If you can't have a conversation and break down your swing, then you don't know your swing. Yeah. It's just that simple. So like, I agree with that. You would laugh at every hitting team lesson, no matter what, especially when I get a new team, I just have them do their swing 50% in slow motion and they get completely lost. If you can't do your swing at 50%, how do you expect to do it 100% when everything's moving at you? Mm-hmm. You got to understand your swing. So that's why those conversations are important. I mean, if you look through my phone and I showed you who I have conversations with the most, who messaged me the most about hitting, you wouldn't be surprised because they're hitters.
They're hitters.
And I'll tell you, like one of the best conversations that I had last year, Ben Hartle, who Springfield kid, won a national championship at Heartland, goes up to Kansas, destroyed it at Kansas, gets drafted by the Rangers. But Ben came home over break, and him and Will Plattner, who's from here, is playing down at Alabama, was at Ole Miss. Like, these guys, just great hitters, great kids. And then RJ Jimerson, who's now out in Cali, but he was at Mizzou last year. And I had a few of my guys, and they were just talking hitting, right? Ben is a guy who hits a ton of power oppo. And when he was like, hey, this is what I want to work on. So I'm just, kind of talking to him, watching some swings. And I said, okay, you hit a lot of ball oppo. Do you do it on purpose? Silence. He's like, no, I don't. So why? He's scared to pull a baseball. Not scared, but because he rolls over. If he tries doing too much, I'm going to get on that front foot. I'm going to roll over. So, we just, had a lot of conversations, and he's having conversations with guys that play for us, and we're all just having, and the cue was, okay, keep your barrel there. Just keep turning. And I'm by no means his hitting coach or anything like that. But it was pretty cool. He hits a 2-run bomb bottom of the ninth in Texas, gives him the lead late in the season, and just messaged him, like, that's awesome, blah, blah. I mean, just keep turning. And it was just funny to hear that cue. And then I heard him say that in the cage a couple weeks ago. He's home right now from fall ball, and he's working with Max. He's in the agreement. He's in there with Max, and swing looks phenomenal. Everything's a line drive, and he's just he said something about keep turning. I just laughed because it's same message, different voice. It's just and then that's a conversation that
but they just talk hitting. It's just
talking hitting. And Max will then take that when he's talking to some younger guys or guys in our team, he'll pick up something from that. So it's contagious. Hitting is contagious when you love it.
Yeah. It's going back to even a point you just said there. Like, I love that concept of you need, show me your swing at 50%. Last night I was watching one of our softball pitching instructors, and she was working with some of her athletes, and she gave them a plyo ball, and she was having them throw it at 50%, and they couldn't do it. Like, they were having to go faster, and she kept slowing them down and slow down and slow down. And I was asking her, kind of what were you working on? And she's like, if they can't feel their sequencing at 50%, she said they're going to be totally out of whack when it's time to go, full speed. So is that where you were going with?
Yeah, I do it all the time. I mean, dry swing in a mirror. That's that's my favorite tool. If 50 dry swings in a mirror is 200 balls off tee. Yeah. You know what I mean? And I make them look at each other, like, do it in the mirror so you can see it. A lot of times you can't feel what we see. I could tell you till I'm blue in the face, your front hip's pulling first. Your back hip's not working. It's your front hip pulling your back hip there. No, I mean, I say it all the time. Like, how many times do you hit with your mom, your dad, your cousin, whatever? And you're doing this. No, I'm not. No.
Right.
Well, the film don't lie. Watch it. Like, film yourself. But if you do it in a mirror, so dry swings, that's one of my favorite cues. Like, one of my hitters I work with, he does dry swings between rounds. And I remember I was working with a group like probably 14-year-olds. And we talk about dry swings, but they're too cool for it. And just in front of their head, putting their head, and they're watching him hit lasers. And he comes out and does it in the mirror. And I just said, "Hey man, what are you doing?" He said, "Dry swings." And I said, "Why are you doing that?" He's like, "Coach, if I can't feel it here, I'll never feel it in there."
Yeah.
And I just looked at him and I said, "Oh, okay." And they, I think it's, maybe it's a generational thing. And I hate to sound like that, but everything's instant gratification. Everything's got to be right now and everything's got to be cool. But listen, man, if you can't feel your swing or understand your swing at 50%, 20, I'd make them go like 20% if I'm being brutally honest. I mean, it has to go slow motion.
Right.
And I'm sure my wife makes fun of me. We'll be in the grocery store and I'm going for a dry swing. We all do that, Yeah. So I just do that all the time.
Well, I do think that it's just, I mean, I'm hoping that when we have more of these types of conversations that we can kind of shift what cool is, because what cool is when that college coach comes up and recognizes that athlete, recognizes that their BP round looks different, recognize that their, the way they talk about the game looks different. Like, if that's, we got to make that cool, and we got to figure out how to get those college coaches to share what's important to them directly to those athletes and have some connection there. And we're the middlemen, and we need to continue to expose our athletes to that, because, I keep saying, making controlled BP cool again, right? Making dry swings cool again, making, there's a lot of those approaches that I think we've abandoned as trainers and coaches. And then at the same time, we're also giving ourselves low grades on, man, we wish our kids had more IQ. Man, we wish our kids could feel their swing in the box more and adjust more. And what, like, some of the stuff that we feel we actually aren't grading ourselves low on physicality. We're actually giving ourselves pretty good scores on physicality. But we're not giving ourselves very good scores on some of the stuff that we've kind of taken out of our training.
Yeah, and I think kids, we talk all the time. We don't have a lot of home run hitters. Actually, we don't have any home run hitters. A lot of them kind of look around. Like, we got guys that can hit home runs. Home runs are mistakes. Singles should be mistakes. You should be high line drives in the gap. And if you get a hold of one, that's mistakes, a home run. But your singles are mistakes now. Yeah. So just kind of getting kids to understand that, because I think I know who you're talking about with that round, in that first round, because I told them, hey, your first round, remember, low line drives. And I get it. Like, some of these guys think, okay, I got 15 college coaches right now watching me. I got to show them I can hit a ball in the gap. They don't care that you can hit a ball in the gap during BP. You should be able to. That's why you're here. So I remember that hitter went line drive, low line drive, low line drive, low line drive. That next round, he hit 2 out.
That's right.
But they don't even really care about that. Do you have the pop? Yeah. But I mean, but that, I think that comes down to parents understanding too. Not everything's an instant gratification. Yeah. I've had those conversations. A couple of years ago, I had a girl that I hit with. She was really, really good athlete, multi-sport athlete. And after 3 lessons, mom's like, I'm not really seeing a difference. I think we're going to go elsewhere. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, yeah. I said, well, do me a favor. This is why I tell everybody, go ahead. I like to know what I do wrong too. So write out what your hitting curriculum was when you weren't with me, those other 4 days. That way I can kind of get an idea. Crickets. You're not going to get better in the cage once a week. It's just that simple. It's the 3-4 other days you take what we work with you on, then you got to put it to work. Yeah. I make sure, and I tell all my kids, like, everyone's got their phone. You have a notepad on your phone, have a hitting section in there.
Journal. Yeah.
Any cue, have a journal, man. Any cue that you hear, I don't care if it's from me,
right,
from Coach Butler, Coach Springer, anybody in the cage with you, whatever, like, you, that clicked, put it in your phone, because what's going to happen is you're going to forget it, and you're going to forget that feeling, and you're going to get really upset. I have tons and tons of notes on my phone. And I know my top hitters have tons of notes on their phone. Yeah. It's just that simple. It's a really, really, really hard process. And also understanding that if you're a really good first off, you never want to be the best baseball player. You never want to be the best player on the field. You always want to be pushed by somebody. But just kind of understand, even the best players every offseason, they're working on something. Mm-hmm. Something's always changing,
Well, I guess I just want to finish up with a little piece of encouragement for you, which says, Kyle, your focus on those separators. I mean, I've gotten a chance to see you, keep those a priority in your training, in your conversations, in your coaching, and I think it's invaluable. I think your kids are demonstrating it. I think, I think they're going to pass it on to other generations, and whatever we want to call it, right? The IQ of the game, the toughness of the game, the smarts of the game, the separators. I just really firmly believe that, you have a great understanding of the swing, which obviously the first part of the discussion today you got to share with everybody. But that's only one component of it. That's only one of the puzzle pieces of building a true hitter. And I hope that we get to have more discussions on some of those other things that you bring not only to the cage, but into, preparation for games. I think it's that whole package. It's that whole package that truly develops offensive players. And I think we need more of that.
I appreciate it. That's probably the biggest compliment I get as a coach. I mean, I got a great group of kids I work with, great group of families. That's obviously the first thing. The goal as a coach, I say it when I do my kickoff meetings to all my parents and families, players, and I sincerely mean it. The biggest compliment I can get is when you look at our fridge and it's got a ton of graduation invites. Now you're getting invited to weddings. Like, make a lasting impression. I couldn't tell you how many lessons I had with one kid, or I don't even know what I charge, anything that, that's not what this is about. It's about gaining trust with the players. If they can know that you have their best interest and that you care for the right reasons and they can trust you, then they can put that into their game. And like you said, if they can take that on to next generations, I did my job as a coach.
Yep. Amen, man. Well, anything else you'd like to share with the group, or should we wrap it?
I think we're good. I think that I had a lot of fun, man. I had a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to do this again. I mean, I think these are conversations that are great for the game, and we just need to have more. It's development.
Yeah.
That's all it's about.
I love it, man. Your passion, your heart, it shows in these discussions, and your purpose, your why, it shows in these discussions. And, I am a firm believer that we do have a need for a little bit of a shift offensively across our game. Yep. We can maybe even dive into that a little bit more, but I think we do need to continue to focus on not just the actual swing itself, but what's the makeup that's needed. And I just want to provide you that encouragement that I think you're doing a great job, and I look forward to our next time that we can talk more about it.
I appreciate it. Had a blast, man.
All right, Kyle. Thanks everybody for joining us on Hardball Talks, and look for some more discussions on offense, and in the future we'll continue to dive into the things that Kyle provides his athletes. So thank you, everybody.